Welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, June 7th, 2021 at 7 p.m. And tonight we have committee meetings, and then we will go into our regular session. The first committee that is meeting is City and Safety Services. That's chaired by Councilmember Grace and joined by Councilmember Fall.
Good evening, President Isley. Thank you. My connection seems to be rather unstable this evening, so if I cut out, I apologize. We have just two items on the agenda for a committee this evening, and they are closely linked in that we have the necessary procedure for disposal of city-owned equipment, in that an old track hoe needs to be disposed of. And then the second item is for replacement of that track hoe. And we will have first reading of both of these ordinances in just a few moments in our regular meeting. Does anyone have questions about them at this point in time? That is all for City and Safety Services this evening. Thank you, President Nicely.
Thanks, Councilmember Grace. Planning and Development Committee is next, and that's chaired by Councilmember Fall and joined by Councilmembers Reisner, Grace, and Smedley.
Great, thank you. I'm also getting that warning of instability, so mind if I don't. This is something that the law director has been working a lot on. It's a right-of-way easement for AEP to be able to complete one of their projects, one of their line projects. These are supplemental to the original discussion. This is mostly out by the west side up in the area, from what I could get from the maps and such. So, Mayor, is there anything else?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I have for this evening. Questions? I forgot that part. Questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to Finance and Personnel, chaired by Councilmember Crowell and joined by Councilmembers Reisner and Smedley.
Thank you, President Isley. The first agenda item tonight is the 2021 Energized Community Grant. This is a grant available through NOPEC, the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, of which we are a member. The primary goal of this grant is to provide funds to local communities for energy saving or energy infrastructure projects. And the city administration is proposing that we use this grant for installing solar powered lighting on the far east side. The electric lines on the far east side run east-west. If you're familiar with the area, on Dalton and Jacobs. And so the arteries or the roads that are running from East State Street to the north, some blocks don't have a lot of lighting. So I believe the mayor is proposing that we use this grant, applying for this grant to install these solar lights on some of those arteries. Mayor, is there any additional information you wanted to provide?
Yes, please. This will be our fourth round of using this funding. I believe it'll be a little bit more than $7,000 this year. In past years, it has been closer to $11,000. The first project, as council is probably aware, is the solar lighting at the bus shelters. The second round, we did the personal device charging tables, two of them. One is finally fully operational at the city pool. The other is in front of the community center The fourth one was installing 6, which have not yet been fully installed, but 6 freestanding solar lampposts in between Townsend and Grand Park. And again, it's a singular pole in between East State Street and Jacobs, and then Jacobs and Dalton. So there's 6 of them. This would allow us to expand that on Avon and Euclid with hopefully 4 more. And as you just indicated, Member Crowell, which is I'm glad that you did, is that the true length of those streets is north to south. And so mid-block, there is little to no lighting because the lighting grid runs east-west, as Member Crowell just indicated. So this will allow us to expand that by a couple more streets, which is, I believe, a great project. I don't know whether this will stay in the $7,000 range in the future or not, but some money is better than no money coming from this particular granting mechanism with Energized Communities.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions from the committee members? Other council members? Okay, thank you. And moving on to the next item on our agenda is appropriations. We have 2 to discuss tonight. The first is a request for $11,000 for a needed repair to the parking garage elevator. So this would go to the parking garage fund for an elevator repair. Are there any questions about that appropriation? Seeing none, I'll move on to the second appropriation, which is we have been receiving tax payments for the Downtown Redevelopment District, the DRD, and we realize we now need to add the administrative fees that are necessary for that. They are not very much, and the appropriation request is to add $5 to Fund 596, Transaction Code 300. I will repeat, that's $5. Any questions on the DRD? Okay, thank you. That completes Finance and Personnel, President Isley.
Then we'll adjourn our committee meetings and move into regular session. The first item of business being to establish a quorum, and all council members are present tonight. Next item of business is disposition of minutes. And we do have minutes for May 3rd, May 10, May 17, and May 24. If I could have a motion from one of the council members to approve these, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Crowell, seconded by Grace. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item of business is communications, and I don't have any communications, but also want to check with other council members to see if they might have any. If none, we will move on to reports and communications from other elected officials. Law Director Eliason?
No.
Auditor Hecht?
Okay, sorry. I do have one. I know that
Uh-oh.
It looks like Auditor Hecht's microphone may be frozen at this point, and if we'll move on to Mayor Patterson, and we'll come back to Auditor Hecht when her system is back.
I just have a couple items to share with council and the viewing audience tonight, President Isley. Number one, I just received this today. It's a letter from the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. And it's a letter indicating that the Ohio Housing Finance Agency has granted an award of 2021 housing credits to an affordable housing development, which is Crenshaw Green. So this is great news that they were able to get that for that 110, I believe it is, unit project as they move forward. So wanted to share that. The other thing to share with council is that this afternoon from 1:30 to 3 o'clock, there was myself and 8 other mayors that met with Governor DeWine for an hour and a half to discuss needs and that we see in southeastern Ohio, well, actually around the state. It was mayors representing cities similar in size to Athens. One of the things that I questioned or wanted to know was whether or not knowing that there was a granting mechanism that's coming up that can be used to purchase body-worn cameras. We already have body-worn cameras for all our police officers. My question was, can that grant also be used for data storage, which is a significant amount of money? And after doing a little research, the governor indicated that yes, that granting mechanism can be used for storage of your BWC footage. So that was great news because that's probably one of the larger expenses with our body-worn cameras, which are vital. Our police department really likes having BWCs when they're having to respond. So it's good news to hear that granting mechanism can be used for not only purchasing, but for the data storage. So that'll be very helpful in the future.
Great. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor Patterson. And Auditor Hecht, thank you. We're glad to see you back. And we switched over. So if you have communications and item to report.
Absolutely fine. I'll be quick. I've never had that happen before. But I don't know, too hot out there or something. Anyway, I just wanted to let everyone know because the audit, while the majority of the work is done in my office and we are the contact for the auditor of state, we rely on every other department in the city to provide their information and reports. And so we didn't have a management letter, which is kind of a big deal, but we also got our award again this year. Here's my certificate. I don't know if I've had maybe 10 or 12 of these out of this 17 years. But I did, one thing I found out this time that I just wanted to comment on, because as I said, it is a group effort and everybody doing what they're supposed to do and what I tell them they can do and can't do. Anyway, only 10% of the people audited by the state get this award. So it's kind of a big deal. There's a lot of people who get audited besides cities and counties. It's villages, townships, everything else. So I just hope we keep up the good work. And I want to thank everyone once again. Thanks.
And thank you, Auditor Hecht. And as you say, all the departments that helped contribute to that and make it happen. Yeah, we couldn't do it alone. All right. Thank you. We'll move on now to ordinances for third reading. Ordinance 6221 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a 10-year lease agreement with the United Seniors of Athens County for space utilization in the community center. And this is introduced by Councilmember Crowell. Councilmember Crowell, you're muted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 06221.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Reisner.
As discussed in committee and first reading, this is an updated agreement with the use of the United Senior Centers in the Athens Community Center. Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and second for approval of the lease agreement. Are there any questions or comments from council members and or city administration or elected officials? And I saw Mayor Patterson, yes, raising your hand. So please go ahead.
I I find it important to share with council and the viewing audience tonight that I do serve on the United Seniors of Athens County's board. I was recused myself from all conversations dealing with this agreement, so I have not been involved in that process.
Thank you. That's helpful to know. Any other comments or questions from council members or our participants, our attendees tonight? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 6321 is an ordinance amending the general fund administrative cost allocation policy established by Ordinance 6715, introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 06321.
Okay, and a second from Councilmember Fall.
Thank you, Member Fall. The title of this pretty much explains. This is the administrative cost allocation from the general fund, which is our way of charging individual city departments or funds for the city's administrative services. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any comments or questions from council members or elected officials? Okay, any comments or questions from our attendees? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 6421 is an ordinance amending the Internal Service Fund cost allocation policy established by Ordinance 12415. This is introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 06421.
Second from Councilmember Ziff.
Thank you, Member Ziff. This is tied to the previous ordinance. This is the internal service fund allocation, which is really a formal way that we assess how each department utilizes both vehicles, vehicle maintenance, and information technology services. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay. We have a motion and second for approval. Any comments or questions from council members or elected officials or our attendees tonight? If there aren't any comments, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 6621 is an ordinance authorizing a contract for right-of-way acquisition services for the West Union Street Improvements Project number 322, introduced by Councilmember Crowe.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 06621.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Smedley.
Thank you, Member Smedley. This is, again, looking towards the future as we have on our city's plans to upgrade West Union Street. And as part of this process, we need services to really have a approved right-of-way employee to get the necessary easements for improving West State Street. And so this allows the service safety director to enter into a contract with those right-of-way acquisition services for that project number 322. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Okay. From our council members or our elected officials, any comments or questions from our attendees? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 6721 is an ordinance closing a portion of Union Street between Court and College on Tuesday, June 15th, 2021 from 5 to 9 p.m., welcoming the Valkyrie Riders Cruisers Club and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 06721.
Seconded by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you, Member Fall. Just a slight update, really typo. Essentially, there's no changes to the pertinent information in this ordinance, but we did have the name of the group incorrect previously. And this is to be understandable, as we had a previous group of Kawasaki riders. They ride Vulcan cruising motorcycles, and they came a few years ago and enjoyed city restaurants and hotels and held their annual meeting here in Athens. And we closed a portion of Union Street on one day for them to be able to all pull in together and enjoy uptown Athens. We repeated the name of that association, the Vulcan Riders, in this ordinance. And in fact, this is a different group, which actually makes me really pleased to know that there are many groups that are coming to this area thanks to the Athens County Convention and Visitors Bureau work to promote our Windy Nine, our scenic roadways that motorcycle enthusiasts like to enjoy, and using Athens as a base. So this year, they are coming and staying at the Ohio University Inn and other local establishments and going to our restaurants. And I believe they're going on the Hocking Valley Scenic Railway and having a parade in Athens. So this is the Valkyrie Riders Cruisers Club. And this little portion from Union to College is simply closing that for them so that they can park their motorcycles en masse. Thank you, President Isley.
Great. Okay, thank you. We have the motion and second for approval of the ordinance. Any comments or questions from council members or elected officials? Any comments or questions from our attendees? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 6821 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a subrecipient contract with Ohio University, authorizing the expenditure to implement a wastewater-based COVID-19 surveillance program and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 6821.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Smedley.
Thank you, Member Smedley. This ordinance allows the city to partner with the university in spending grant dollars to help us with future monitoring of our wastewater system for potential viral outbreaks, specifically COVID-19. But in the future, we may also be able to use this for other things that may happen in the city for other infectious disease detection. So this is a fantastic opportunity for the city and the university to partner, protect the health of our citizens. And it's wonderful because it is fully grant funded through the Target of Opportunity CDBG CV Grant Award. And it totals $83,100.
Great. All right, we have a motion and second for approval of this ordinance. Are there any comments or questions from council members or elected officials? Any comments or questions from our attendees? If not, then we'll have the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 6921 is an ordinance authorizing design engineering services for the water treatment plant softener rehabilitation project number 338, introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 6921.
We have a second from Councilmember Fall.
Thank you, Member Fall. And this ordinance does very much exactly what the title states. It authorizes our Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for design engineering services for the water treatment plant softener rehabilitation project. And this is a project that has been needed for a little while and was put on hold. And the design engineering authorization is to expend up to $50,000 for this project.
Okay. We have a motion and second for approval of the ordinance. Any comments or questions from council members or elected officials? Any comments or questions from our attendees? If not, then we'll vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. And council members might note that before reading this ordinance, that earlier in the evening I had said we might need to amend, suspend, and approve. We're only needing to amend the next ordinance tonight, Council Member Grace. There's no need to suspend tonight. Clerk of Council has told us. Ordinance 7021 is an ordinance authorizing the disposal of certain fire equipment no longer needed for a municipal purpose, introduced by Council Member Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. And I would like to make a motion to amend Ordinance 7021.
We have a second from Council Member Fall.
And this amendment is just to make sure that our ordinance complies with and matches our city rules for donating equipment. And so Section 2 of the ordinance currently reads that the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to dispose of said equipment by donating it to the Waterloo Volunteer Fire Department. We're not, under our rules, allowed to specify to whom we're donating it at the outset of the process. So it will be removing the language, donating it to the Waterloo Volunteer Fire Department, and replacing that with simply donation. So dispose of said equipment by donation. I believe that's an accurate description of what needs to happen. Am I right, Auditor Hecht? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and Auditor Heck, thanks for alerting us to the process, making sure we're following the correct policy that we've set up. Thank you. So we have a motion and second for amending this ordinance. Is there any discussion? Any questions or comments from council members, elected officials, our attendees? If not, we'll have the vote then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, the motion carries and the ordinance has been amended and read for the first time. We'll now move on to Ordinance 7121. This is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title I, General Provisions to add Title 45, Fees, to include a fee for an historic preservation design review application. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you, President Nisley. I move that we adopt 7121.
Second, Councilmember Grace.
Great, thank you. It's exactly as the title says, for when you go through the process, that now there is a fee associated with it. So, thank you.
Okay. And any comments or questions from our council members or elected officials? Any comments or questions from our attendees? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved.
Great, thank you.
Ordinance 7221 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title III, Administrative Provisions, Unlawful Discriminatory Practices. And this is introduced by Councilmember Smedley.
Thank you, President Nisley. I move that we adopt Ordinance 07221.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Ziff.
Thank you, Member Ziff. This is an ordinance that adds source of income to the city's ordinance called Title III Administrative Provisions. And when we say source of income, we mean lawful income derived from wages, Social Security, supplemental income, supplemental Social Security income, all forms of federal, state, or local assistance payments or subsidies, including rent vouchers and support and child support, spousal support, and public assistance. Specifically, we're adding source of income to Section C, discrimination in housing, In addition, this ordinance clarifies some details in the penalty section, specifying the degree of the misdemeanor and the fine amount. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have a motion and second for approval of this ordinance. And do we have any comments or questions from our council members or elected officials? If not, we'll ask to see if we have any comments or questions from our attendees. And I do see that Damon Crane has raised his hand. And so and if you're wishing to speak to this, you would be allowed up to 3 minutes of comments. And you would give us your name and address so we have this for the record and also for those viewing on the live stream.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Damon Crane, 96 Hudson Avenue. Tonight I'm speaking on behalf of 9 different organizations, all of which have signed the following letter, urging you to join the 11 other Ohio municipalities and 19 other states that already ban source of income discrimination. The organizations I'm speaking on behalf of are United Athens County Tenants, the Ohio Poverty Law Center, My Sister's Place, Survivor Advocacy Outreach Program, Hawking Athens Perry Community Action Project, Southeast Ohio Habitat for Humanity, Southeast Ohio Subchapter of the National Lawyers Guild, the Ohio Chapter of the National Lawyers Guild, and the Appalachian Peace and Justice Network. The letter reads as follows. Dear Athens City Council, on April 12th, 2021, City Council member Arian Smedley proposed a change to Athens City Code Section 30762C. This change, or rather addition to the code language, would ban discrimination in housing based on source of income. Source of income refers to how a tenant pays their rent. The most common form of source of income discrimination occurs when a landlord refuses to rent to a tenant who receives a public housing subsidy, such as a Section 8 housing choice voucher or rental assistance from community action agencies. In August of last year, the Aspen Institute predicted that 30 to 40 million families would lose housing this year due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of these families may be eligible for public housing assistance, which would allow them to achieve long-term sustainable rental assistance. Without this ordinance, Athens tenants could be refused housing solely because they receive government assistance to pay their rent. United Athens County Tenants, along with the undersigned organizations, implore City Council to enact this ordinance as soon as possible to protect our neighbors, family, and friends from source of income discrimination. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the inequities that exist in our society. It is up to Athens City Council to close the gap by ensuring secure and safe housing for all. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much for bringing the letter forward. All right, do we have any other comments or questions before the vote? If not, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. So thank you. Right, we have one ordinance for second reading. I will read the title. I'll pause and see if there are any comments or questions. Ordinance 6521 is an ordinance amending the 2021 appropriation ordinance and authorizing the auditor to make an interfund transfer, introduced by Councilmember Crowell. Any comments or questions? Okay, this will come forward next week for third reading then. We now have a series of ordinances for first reading. 7421 is an ordinance authorizing the creation of an Athens Uptown designated outdoor refreshment area known as ADORA. And this is introduced by all members of council. And I believe Council Member Crowell has spoken to this before. This is an application process for what would be a 5-year program with proposed DORA in certain areas of the city. Councilmember Crowell, would you be willing to speak briefly to this?
I would. Thank you, President Nisley. I would just like to say that the Athens Uptown Business Association, which created a subcommittee to work on proposing DORA to the city administration and to city council, was very impressive with the diligence by which they studied other DORAs across the state and regularly meeting to try to work out the particulars of what would work well in Athens. Jessica Thomas, who is owner of Brennan's, as well as the chair of the Athens Uptown Business Association, working with the president of the area Chamber of Commerce, the Athens Chamber of Commerce, Danny Underhill, put together this proposal. And as we saw at our last committee meeting, or our previous committee meeting, we learned about the work that they have done and what they were proposing for the city of Athens. And I wholeheartedly support this proposal. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay. Thank you. And a comment from Councilmember Smedley. Yes.
President Isley, I had some offline conversations about whether or not we wanted to explore this as a pilot, being that was consistent with some of the other new ideas that we've had in the city for our parking program and the parklet program. But it was explained to me that and President Isley touched on this briefly, this pilot wouldn't necessarily fit with this particular program, and I don't know if maybe President Isley or administration would want to elaborate on why.
I suppose it's maybe similar to an ad hoc committee as opposed to a standing committee, and that, it's for a pilot program we tend to think of as we're going to try something for a trial for a short period of time to see if it's effective and works. And I think the time parameters of the application to the state, it being 5 years, would indicate longer than a typical pilot project. Usually pilot projects, at least in my experience, have usually been like 6 months or a year, sometimes a little bit longer. So I hope that provides enough explanation. Mayor Patterson.
Just a little more explanation. Once this goes through council, and if council approves, then it goes to the Ohio Department of Commerce for approval. Once they approve, all of the establishments that have liquor permits have to now apply for a liquor permit that is similar to the same liquor permit they have, whether it's a D1 or D5, whatever that is. Plus, it will also have a DORA indicator on that application. So it's a little bit more complicated than creating a pilot. But 5 years, council does have the opportunity in 5 years, within that 5-year period, as we're tracking and seeing if it's working, if there are flaws, whether there's changes that need to be made. It can be amended in that 5 years if we feel that there are some things that need to be amended with the DORA. But then at the end of the day, at nearing the end of that 5-year period, if I or council decides this is just not working for us in Athens, a DORA can be rescinded as well. So I guess if you want to think of it as a 5-year pilot, but it's just, there's more complication than just saying, hey, this is a pilot for a couple of years, because of the process that the establishments have to go through to get their DORA indicator for their own liquor permits.
Thank you.
Okay, and yes, Law Director Eliason.
Specifically in the Ohio Revised Code, the code section that creates these DORAs, it does say at any time the legislative authority may dissolve all or part of the outdoor refreshment area. So that's built in, that if things aren't working, the revised code says that we can. So it could be at any time.
And we have any other questions or comments? Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. I just wanted to mention that I did hear from one citizen who was concerned about the containers that would be used for this program. As I reassured that citizen, and I'd like to reassure the public today, the subcommittee took very close consideration of the proper container to use for this. Now, you might understand that there are health code reasons why these would have to be single-use containers. The ordinance does require them to be 100% compostable. I realize that that's not perfect in a perfect world, but it does give some possibilities for the waste disposal. They've talked to AHRC and gone through all the potential waste management of the cups, but they're also open to perhaps in the future for this initial go around. They really had to work with all the local businesses who might make this a success, and the local businesses had to be a part of this commitment to purchasing cups for their establishment. So I know that they are open to looking in the future towards possibly a stainless steel cup that more local tourists to Athens might like to take home with them. Again, that's not a cup that can be reused. You could take it to the next establishment and get another beverage, but it might be a way to go. Law Director Eliason, did you have something to say there?
I do. The section of the revised code is very specific about what can and cannot happen in a DORA. And I'm looking at the section that says that, a requirement that beer and intoxicating liquor be served solely in plastic bottles or other plastic containers in the area. I suppose a compostable cup would be acceptable too. But absolutely, what I've read is absolutely no glass, or it doesn't even allow for a permanent container like, well, I guess a plastic container, but I don't know about a steel. So it's interesting that everything is spelled out so specifically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And any other comments or questions from council members? Mayor Patterson, I just wanted to make one comment. I did want to put the parameter dates on this for us are May 17 to August 15th. Mm-hmm. So that's the time period that it would run through each year. Yes, Mayor Patterson.
Thank you, President Isley. I'm glad that you mentioned that. It'll also only run Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays within restrictive times, not to go beyond 10 p.m. on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I believe Sunday is until 8, if I'm not mistaken. The other thing is that Ohio Revised Code even speaks to the size. For a city our size, the DORA cannot exceed 150 acres of land. The acting service safety, or the acting director for engineering and public works, Jessica Dine, has certified the space of the DORA as being 45.84 acres in the city. So we're well under the maximum allowable acreage for a DORA.
Great. And I noticed that Jessica Thomas is among the attendees, and she, as Councilmember Crowell referred to her, she is president of the Uptown Business Association. So Jessica, I wasn't sure if you were wanting to make any kind of comments while we're discussing this tonight. She does have her hand raised. So if you give us your name, address, a group that you represent, just so that we have it recorded one more time for our live streaming audience, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Hello, it is Jessica Thomas, owner of Brennan's Coffee Cafe and the current chair of the Athens Uptown Business Association. And I was just going to add to the cup discussion that we were going to look at all fully compostables to start. But we did find a DORA within the state that's using a reusable hard plastic cup. So we're trying to hear more back from them to get a little more detail. And our hope is that next summer, maybe there's more clarifications and that we could look at metal tumblers, because I've been told those are better than using a hard plastic cup. But we're definitely keeping our ears open, and we're looking more, and we're trying to find the most responsible way to do this.
Great.
But otherwise, I think Mayor Patterson hit everything on the head. Very, very easy to fine tune this, turn it on, turn it off. It's not a permanent anything. It's just a new feature we can add to the Uptown area.
Great. Thank you for the comment.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, we will be having additional readings of the ordinance. So stay tuned. We'll move on to the next one now, 7521. This is an ordinance authorizing the disposal of a track hoe in the Department of Engineering and Public Works that is no longer needed for a municipal purpose. Introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. This is the disposal that I referenced just a bit ago during our committee meeting. And we have a track hoe that no longer meets the city's needs. And this ordinance authorizes disposal of that track hoe to be used as a trade-in credit toward the purchase of a replacement track hoe.
Great. Thank you. Any comments or questions from council members, elected officials, or attendees? All right. We'll move on to the corollary ordinance 7621. This is an ordinance authorizing the purchase of a replacement track hoe for the Engineering and Public Works Department, introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. And yes, this spells out the amounts of for the financing of this purchase. Excuse me, that $10,428.82 will come from the street fund, $10,428.80 water maintenance fund, $10,428.80 sewer maintenance fund. And the Service Safety Director is authorized to accept bids where necessary and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder, or to use one of the city's cooperative purchasing programs to acquire that replacement track hoe. And the total expenditure authorization is for $60,686.42.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Grace. Are there any questions or comments from council members, elected officials? Any comments or questions from our attendees? If not, we'll move on to Ordinance 7721. This is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to accept bids where necessary and enter into contract for replacement of the roof on the city building and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. We have been made aware in previous committee meetings that our city building roof is in need of not just repair, but replacement. We are in year 25 of the current roof. Some patch repairs were attempted in the past, but we know from rainwater leaking into the building, the damage is occurring, and it's just time to have this work done. And so this ordinance allows the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract. The initial estimate that we received was approximately $180,000. And that's before we know really the quality of the substructure and different repairs that may have to be made once the shingling is removed. And so this ordinance, section 2 reads, the 2021 appropriation ordinance is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $200,000. That's to Capital Improvements Fund 580. And the Service Safety Director will obviously be soliciting bids and will be entering into a contract with the lowest and best builder and possibly using one of the City of Athens's cooperative purchasing programs. So this is something we need to get done, and this is the first reading of that necessity. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay, yes, thank you. Mayor Patterson.
Thank you, Member Crowell and President Nisley. This is desperately needed right now. We've got to protect a very old building, and council chambers in particular that has a lot of very expensive government channel equipment in there. As you've noted, the estimate was about $180,000. We're asking for $200,000 because I think we're all well aware of the escalating costs of building materials. And we really do not know. Once those shingles are pulled back and the felt is removed, we'll have a better idea as to whether we're going to have to start replacing plywood panels, roofing panels up there as well. So we just don't know. That's why we have the additional $20,000 in there, so that we don't have to worry at this point in time about, the 10% above the estimated cost of that repair. And again, taking into account building material expenses at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from council members or other elected officials? Any comments or questions from our attendees? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to Ordinance 7821. This is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to pay a one-year membership fee to the Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachia, known as ORCA, to provide financial support from the city's transient guest tax for the Bailey's Trail System, along with other recreational activities, and is introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President. As discussed in committee, this is the current way we can support the Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachia, which is overseeing currently the Bailey's Trail System development. If you've not been out into Chansey recently, there are about 26 miles completed. They're just fantastic, on the way to hopefully eventually almost 90 miles of mountain biking and accessibility and walking trails in the Wayne National Forest. So we have discussed this for many years in the past about how the city and the county may support this project. And ORCA has now gone to this membership fee. And we had a wonderful presentation by Executive Director Jesse Powers about the work that they're doing in this regard. So this is authorizing the mayor to pay a one-year membership fee of $90,000. $90,000 was the original amount that we were considering paying on a yearly basis for 20 years. And that might still be a possibility, but as it current stands with the county's decisions on their support of the project, Athens right now would be doing this 1 year commitment to membership in ORCA, and then looking at the way things are going to move forward. So the $90,000 as previously planned should come from the transient guest tax. So it's not coming immediately out of the pockets of citizens of Athens in terms of our taxes. It is coming from those who visit our community, including for the Bailey's Trail System. Thank you, President Isley.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any other? Yes, a comment from Councilmember Fall.
Great. Thank you. I just want to make a couple points about what went on before and all the discussion about that. It was never really about not supporting Bailey's. So this process for me is a lot more upfront and transparent to fund the ORCA. It was always looking at our resources first so that it ensured that the profits stayed within our communities. And that was the big discussion that we had for many months. And I'm happy to see that it's going progressing quickly like we hoped. And it's a great project. And I'm glad to see that it's under local control with local money. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Mayor Patterson.
I've mentioned this many, many times. I'm going to say it again, is that the money for this $90,000 is coming from what came out of the transient guest tax. So I think that needs to be very clear to everybody that this is not coming from city income tax. This is coming from the hotel tax that has existed here in the city of Athens for many years.
Okay, thanks. And any other comments or questions from council members, elected officials, or our attendees? All right, we'll move on to Ordinance 7921. This is an ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to accept a Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, NOPEC, 2021 Energized Community Grant Funds and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. As introduced at committee a little over 40 minutes ago, this is the NOPEC grant we discussed for solar lighting on the Far East Side. So this simply authorizes the city to accept this grant. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay, thanks. Any comments or questions from our council members, elected officials, or our attendees? If not, we'll move on to Ordinance 8021. This is an ordinance amending the 2021 appropriation ordinance and authorizing the auditor to make an interfund transfer, introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. We have a number of items in the appropriation ordinance, and I'll read through a few of them, or all of them, briefly. We do have a number of appropriations for the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant, administrative fees. But let me see, we have $2,000 to the general fund for City Council to purchase new council member laptops. The city has a good deal, and we are in need of replacing the used laptops that were purchased in 2015. $1,500 to the general fund for police to purchase a mobile computer router. One of the police vehicles needs a new mobile computer router. Then there is the $7,383 to the CDBG fund for transfer for those administrative fees. Then the $11,000 to the parking garage fund for the elevator repair mentioned in the previous committee meeting. And also the $5 to the DRD fund for the county fees for the, again, the fees associated with the DRD, the administrative fees, as mentioned in the committee meeting. So this is authorizing the auditor to make the following transfers from the CDBG fund to general fund in the amount of $1,622.28. From the same fund to the street fund, $220 in the amount of $1,728.33. Same CDBG fund to the water fund in the amount of $2,016.38. And then also from the CDBG fund to the sewer fund in the amount of $2,016.39. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council members, elected officials, or our attendees? If not, then we'll move on to Ordinance 8121. This is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to execute supplemental electric line easements and rights-of-way for the Strouds Run Clark line with the Ohio Power Company, AEP, and declaring an emergency, as introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. We just discussed this in committee. It's essential for AEP to be able to go ahead with the line work that they need to do to have these supplemental items passed by council at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments? Any comments or questions from council members, elected officials, or our attendees? If not, we'll now move on to announcements and other business. We have two items. The first one of which is a motion to cancel our hiring freeze review. You may remember that earlier in the pandemic, when there were particular financial constraints, council members did ask to review if there were any positions being hired in on the 2021 staffing ordinance. And we have found that we, under the advice of the auditor and mayor, in consideration of this, we do not believe that we need to be reviewing all of the hiring into positions that are currently in the 2021 staffing ordinance. And I think what this will do is very carefully help us to move forward where there are openings that we need to be moving along to the city so that we're back to operating at full capacity. And I think this will allow the administration to move forward. And as always, we always have the careful care of our auditor looking at these kinds of things. So we have a very careful checks and balances, and it's felt that a motion would be appropriate at this point to cancel this hiring freeze review. Is there a motion from let's do the motion and second, and then we'll entertain any comments. So do we have a motion for canceling this hiring freeze review? Made by Councilmember Fall, seconded by Councilmember Crowell. And then I believe that we had a comment from Auditor Hecht.
Just another clarification that's already been talked about is that any of these hirings, rehirings are positions, as you mentioned, that are already in the staffing ordinance, and that any new positions or changes in positions that we have currently in our ordinance would still go through council.
Okay, thank you. And comment from Councilmember Fall, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that through the last year of COVID, the city, with the administration and city council and all the department people and all our employees, have really put forward what we needed to do as a community. We powered through some really tough times, and this is a good thing to go forward with removing it, because every day we're getting towards more normal. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody who's worked so hard to get to this point. Thank you.
Yeah. Good comment, Councilmember Fall. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council members, elected officials, or our attendees? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, the motion carries, and that hiring freeze review is canceled. Yes, the mayor's happy. I think we're all happy as a symbol of just beginning to return to a more normal working environment. So, and thank council members too. I would like to thank you all for your leadership during this time. This has not been easy, and we've had a lot of input and a lot of long hours also from our clerk of council, Debbie Walker, and our law director, Eliason, and patience from our mayor. So there you go. And oversight from our auditor. All right. We now have reappointments to our Historic Reservation Commission, and I believe Councilmember Smedley is carrying this out tonight.
Yes, thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the mayor's recommendation and we reappoint Guy Phillips and Marianne Reeves, who is the current chair to the Historic Preservation Commission, for another 4-year term.
Okay, we have a motion, and then we have a second from Councilmember Fall. All right. And we have is that a comment from Councilmember Fall also?
Yeah, I would just like to say thank you, because they have done a huge amount of work with all the stuff that's been going on. It's great with the downtown redevelopment districts, which was from the state, really gave us a tool to be able to use for saving historic buildings and using them as anchors to do redevelopment and economic development. So thank you. It's important.
Great. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and second for approval of the reappointments of Marianne Reeves and Guy Phillips. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries, and they've been reappointed, and we thank them, as Councilmember Fall said, for their service. I'd like to make one other announcement. You know, I'm just sitting back looking at the gallery view of all of those present tonight, and we've got a couple of people who are here and who have been with us through this entire pandemic, and they're during the council meetings, there are these little icons that say the government channel or Scott Thompson, and those two people and their intern have spent more hours setting up Zoom meetings, because we switched from a year ago last March to Zoom meetings remote, not only for council, but for all of our commission meetings and a myriad of other meetings for planning, for conferences that just couldn't have happened without your help. So we want to thank the both of you and acknowledge all your work. There's Scott. Thank you. Okay. And Ryan, thanks to you also. Okay. All right.
Thank you, President Nisley.
Sure thing. Okay. Do we have any other announcements? Mayor Patterson.
Just to follow on President Nisley to what you just said, I feel compelled to share that with all of the programming that Scott, you and Ryan had to do with setting up these Zoom meetings, I would say that everything has worked smoothly 99.9% of the time, which is amazing. I don't say that in jest. I say that from the standpoint that, having to learn new technologies, knowing that we live in Southeast Ohio, knowing that granted we're the largest city in Southeast Ohio, that we still have broadband issues, and that you were able to make this almost look easy, Scott and Ryan. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you guys have done and continue to do. We're not out of the weeds yet, everybody. But, just know that with the weekly updates with the mayor to everything that goes on, you guys have been fantastic. So my hat's off to you.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. We now have an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that were not covered on the agenda. And is there anyone amongst the attendees tonight who would want to make a comment? I'll look for a raised hand from anyone. If not, then what we'll do is have a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilmember Fall, seconded by Councilmember Grace. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.